On Tech News Today, Yelp is for sale. Will Google bite? Plus, Facebook says the political echo chamber in your newsfeed is your fault, not theirs. And Google will not only let you search for food, but order it directly from search results. We'll tell you all about it on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, May 8th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used iPhone, iPad, and other Apple products are worth at Gazelle.com. And by Naturebox. Naturebox ships tasty and guilt-free snacks right to your door. With over 100 flavors to choose from, like coffee kettle popcorn and dark cocoa almonds, you'll never get bored of snacking again. Try Naturebox at naturebox.com/twit. That's naturebox.com/twit. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with a journalist who report it. Welcome to the show. My name is Mike Elgan, and our co-anchor today is Mashable senior tech correspondent and Apple Watch owner Christina Warren. How the heck are you, Christina?
Well, I have my Apple Watch, so I'm very excited. It is not the pink color that I wanted. I still have to wait for those bands to get in stock, but 11 days was just too long to be without an Apple Watch. So I caved at day 8 and ordered last Saturday and received it on Tuesday. So I'm now, as I said...
So you had you already ordered the pink one?
I'd ordered this. I wanted the stainless steel 38 millimeter, and that's what I got. But originally, I had ordered it with the soft pink modern buckle, and that had a delivery date of June, just June. A lot of people got updates of specific days or weeks. I did not. And in fact, if you try to order that band standalone, it says unavailable, which led me last week to posit that the real bottleneck with the Apple Watch shipping times is not necessarily the watch, but the bands. And I actually think that I've been proven right in that case, because I have not been able to find anyone who's actually received either the leather loop or the modern buckle. Anyone who's ordered those watches with those bands has not received them. So on Saturday, following a tip that someone on Twitter gave me, I ordered the 38 millimeter with the classic buckle, just the black leather band. I ordered on Saturday while I was watching the Kentucky Derby and having some serious FOMO with the guy next to me who had an Apple Watch. And I got it on Tuesday.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's much better.
So certainly the band.
You were probably just thinking, I'm waiting for a band. I'm waiting for a buckle. This just doesn't make any sense.
Right. I mean, at this point, originally I was like, oh, I'll hold out, and especially when it was seeming like, okay, if the difference is waiting 2 weeks, if it's the end of May versus sometime in June, I might as well just wait the extra 2 weeks and get the model that I really want or get the band that I really want. But if it's a difference in literally I got one on Tuesday or waiting another 6-7 weeks potentially, yeah, I needed a watch. I had too much FOMO, so I got mine. And you got yours too. When did you get yours?
I got mine last Sunday. So it's been almost a week, and I absolutely love it. I've just been spending lots of time goofing around with it, and I just love the haptics. I like making phone calls. I like the tapping, all that stuff. And I'm just going in app by app and turning things on and trying different things and seeing what happens, seeing what's possible. And it's just a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, there's some performance issues. It's kind of slow sometimes. Some of the notifications are completely useless because you can't do anything with them.
Right.
Yeah, you can complain for hours about the thing, but it's better than anything else out there by far, I think. And I think it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've been having a blast with it. I can't wait to really spend some serious time this weekend really exploring more apps. I'm with you. I'm kind of, I started out with no apps and then started adding them little by little and kind of seeing, everything that I want. And doing that, I think I've had better battery life. I think, by only having the apps that I really like installed and not having everything installed, which is different from what I do on my phone, right? Where I just have, like a million apps installed. But no, it's been a lot of fun. And I'm with you. I like the notifications. I like the haptics. I like that I get reminded to stand up every hour so that, I don't shorten my lifespan or whatever they say that the case is for spending 12 hours of your day on your butt. So it's good.
It does have low standards. I think you can raise them. I need to go in and deal with the fitness stuff, but it's like always congratulating me for standing up. And it's like, dude, I walk to the refrigerator and back. You know, it's like I'm not an Olympic athlete here. I don't need congratulations for that. But I think I can tweak that and basically challenge myself a little more. Plus, I'm more decisive now that I've got the Magic 8-Ball app. It don't have to even make decisions anymore. It's amazing. It's a miracle.
Yeah, I got the Tamagotchi app, so I'm super excited about that. Twit listeners will know I really wanted a Tamagotchi app for the Apple Watch, and I have one, and I'm super excited that I get to play with my pet. So that's a good thing.
And it's way better than an actual pet because they don't bark and leave little steaming piles around the house.
They're so much cheaper. They're so much cheaper. It's insane.
More news in a sec. But first, let's talk about Gazelle. If you want to buy a drone, and they're pricey, let's face it, they're expensive. They're like, it's like iPhone money, you know, up there. They can be very, especially the really good ones with the really good cameras. And so to raise the money for that, if you got old phones and tablets lying around the house, sell them to Gazelle to raise that money so you can buy that brand new drone. Of course, if you want to buy a phone or a tablet from Gazelle, they are a great place to buy something because you can buy a certified like new device. It's just like a brand new device. It's just less expensive. And it's backed by a 30-point inspection to make sure that they're fully functional, and they're backed by a 30-day risk-free return policy. There's no reason not to try it. If you're not sure whether you want a pre-owned device, try it. And there's no risk at all. You can send it back if you know, for any reason, really. Find out what your iPhone's worth. Take a minute and go to gazelle.com to find out. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and do the tech news? The Wall Street Journal reports in an exclusive that Yelp is looking for someone to buy them. Despite their apparent success, Yelp is struggling with both users and advertising revenue, according to the story. Drew FitzGerald, he co-authored the piece, and he joins us now to talk about it. Hey, Drew, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Mike?
Great, thank you. Now, Yelp seems to be dominating its space. Why are they struggling?
Well, they're struggling because, like everything else in Silicon Valley, it's all about growth and accelerating growth. And although Yelp is still adding users and its revenue is still growing, it's definitely slowing down sharply. That's led the stock to basically crash from close to $100 a year ago to earlier this week about $40. It's now up to $50 now that there's talk that it may be shopping itself. But it hasn't been easy for Yelp.
Well, first off, Drew, great story, great scoop. You know, why are advertisers not placing ads on the service? Like, what's causing them to stop placing ads with Yelp?
Yeah, well, we mentioned in the story that although they have a few different revenue streams, they're adding a platform that can handle transactions, although they said that's not a focus, and, you know, big brands can advertise. Still, the vast majority of their ad dollars come from the kinds of companies that are listed on their mom and pop shops. We quoted an analyst who said that because it's a hassle for them, many of them may not understand it, or they might just not see the value. Something like this analyst estimated 70% of businesses that advertised last year won't renew next year. So that's a problem. You know, you can have as many hundreds of millions of users as you'd like, but if you can't get reliable ad dollars from there, unlike a Google or a Facebook that has, you know, General Motors advertising for them, these kinds of companies don't have the ad budget. So it might not be living up to the expectations that a lot of people have placed on local online media.
I had a long conversation with a local restaurateur at one of my favorite restaurants in this area, and he was telling me that Yelp essentially was shaking him and other small business owners down all the time, telling them that they would remove negative reviews if they advertised, and, you know, shady practices like that. And I was a little bit surprised. I did a Google search on it, and it turns out that this is a widespread complaint. Do you think this has anything to do with Yelp's difficulty in hanging on to small businesses?
It's possible. There's a perception out there that Yelp is really presses businesses hard, makes a hard sell for having listings, for paying for enhanced profiles. Yelp denies all that. They say that you know, paying for advertising doesn't improve your rankings on Yelp, and that they remove fake reviews as quickly as they can. But there's definitely the perception out there. Another thing that's hurt Yelp is just the fact that Google itself, if you look for a business now, it's that business is a Yelp result is less likely to turn up at the top of the list than it was a year ago. That's something that's been widely acknowledged and has hurt Yelp it's ironically something that helped them really gain hundreds of, tens and hundreds of millions of users early on when they were starting.
Yes. No, exactly. And you talk about that, and obviously Yelp is kind of putting the onus, some of the blame, on Google for their growth. And there have been, reports coming out from the Wall Street Journal and other places, through different freedom of information requests, leaks, and things like that, that kind of show that, Google might be pushing down those results more. But is there a lot of truth to that's really, kind of hurting, Yelp's ranking in terms of SERP stuff, or is that just sort of sour grapes, and the sort of thing that maybe you face if you try to build a business on someone else's platform, and if search is such a core part to your business and you don't have control over, where you rank on search, is that just kind of par for the course of what happens with your business?
Yeah, it is par for the course. I mean, there's no question that you can see less often. The results are getting pushed down for one reason or another. They turn up less often than they did a year ago, and that's affected Yelp's results. But I mean, these were often referrals that Yelp didn't have to pay for in the first place. So it's kind of, live by Google, die by Google. Yelp has to, at some point, pay to expand its user base and expand the number of businesses that want to be on the platform. And the problem for Yelp is it can do that, but it costs money. It has to hire a sales force, it has to pay for more marketing online and pay Google and other click-based ads to give them those referrals. The question is at what cost? The other thing to remember is Yelp seems like it's everywhere, and everyone, you use it, I use it. But it had a little over 140 million active users the last time it reported. Those are big numbers, but those aren't Facebook numbers. Those aren't Amazon numbers. It has a lot of room to grow. The question is, how much would it cost?
Yeah. And Google, of course, offered to buy Yelp 5 years ago. Yelp turned them down. I think Yelp turned them down.
Yes,
do you think Google is still potentially interested in buying Yelp at this point?
It's too soon to tell. This is very early days. Yelp is kind of exploring whether it would like to sell itself. People I talk to say that there would be a lot of hurdles to overcome. There's a lot of bad blood between those two companies after Yelp turned down the deal and Google went out and began to build its own platform that competes directly with the company. Granted, they have a job to do to get the highest possible bid they can, should they go through with this, but there's definitely no love lost between those two companies. It'd be less likely.
It occurs to me, Drew, that there are kind of a lot of parallels between kind of what's happening with Yelp and what they're facing, and what's happening in just the kind of the hyper-local space in general. Obviously, Foursquare has suffered from that. They've tried to be, a Yelp clone and have kind of suffered, and now we're trying to kind of sell the story that they're a data company. They're obviously not public, but they're still going through some challenges and transformations. Groupon, which obviously hasn't fared as well in the stock market as Yelp, went through the same thing with not being able to retain businesses, coming back to it again and again. Can you think of any examples of any companies in this kind of local space where the kind of their core client are these smaller local businesses that has actually managed to succeed?
Yeah, well, I'd say, of that group of companies, Angie's List is a smaller company. It's kind of working in a smaller niche, right? It charges consumers, charges members to basically be a member, a subscription fee, so they can see those reviews and get discounts on those sorts of deals. They've struggled with problems of their own, and have in their latest quarter weren't profitable, but they're on their way to profitability. But again, that's a smaller niche. When it comes to companies like Foursquare and Groupon, this is another illustration of the fact that if you want to have relationships with all these businesses, you can, but it's very expensive because there are so many mom and pop businesses that often need to have their hand held to stay in business with them. And they may not generate the kind of revenue that a big multinational corporation with a multi-million-dollar ad budget can have. That's why Foursquare, you see, they're going much more aggressively after those kinds of national brands for that reason.
Drew, we report on all kinds of different, companies that are struggling or not struggling, and typically when they have earnings calls, you find out, oh, they beat expectations, they missed expectations, and so on. And I've noticed a very, very strong trend that the companies that rely on online advertising are missing their expectations. They're disappointing investors. They're not doing as well as everybody expects them to do. And I think that the big problem that a lot of people don't talk enough about is the fact that there's a glut of advertising out there. It's very, very difficult to continue to make money. And people, the whole financial reporting game is all about expectations. Those expectations are based on past performance, but you can't rely on advertising prices and performance to meet what happened before. It always has to change and update. And do you think that there's something to that general theory that it's just a bad time right now to be to be relying on online advertising?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good point. I think, like you said, because those kinds of ad trends are so unpredictable, I can't really tell whether it's a bad time, whether this is a passing thing, or whether this is going to be something that these companies struggle with for years. But just look online, it does seem more crowded. The other aspect is there's a glut of online advertising, and it's a crowded field of companies that are offering up those eyeballs, as you call them, to show ads to people. And even if the pie is growing, there are more people trying to get a piece of the pie. It could be harder to meet the targets.
Yep. I think you're absolutely right about that. Drew FitzGerald is at WSJ.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Drew FitzGerald. Thanks for joining us today, Drew.
Thanks, Mike.
Let us know what you think about Yelp and their search for a suitor. Send email to tnt@twit.tv. Well, if you live in a social media echo chamber or filter bubble, you have only yourself to blame, according to a new report from Facebook. Scott K. Johnson wrote about the story for Ars Technica and joins us to explain all this. Welcome to you, Scott.
Thanks.
Now, what are these Facebook researchers getting at here, that Facebook isn't to blame for what its newsfeed algorithms deliver?
Yeah, and so that characterization will be maybe challenged by some people, and we can talk about that a little bit. But the basic idea here is that the people at Facebook have access to just a tremendous amount of data on everything that all the Facebook users do, and so that to ask the question, does Facebook's algorithm limit the amount of information that might challenge your viewpoints that you encounter? They can actually just go look and find out whether that's happening, and so they kind of swum through all the data and they picked out what they could. And the take home was that there's definitely an effect from the Facebook algorithm limiting the amount of, if you're more of a conservative person, how much sort of liberal sourced news kind of stuff you see, or vice versa. But the stronger effect is still what we do ourselves. We don't like to click on things that don't already sort of fit with the channel we've put ourselves in. And so the stronger part of it, according to their study and the way they characterize it, is you personally and not Facebook's algorithm.
No, but Google's algorithms, kind of in contrast, they play devil's advocate on purpose. If a search query brings up a point of view, then they make sure that an opposing point of view is also present in the results. Is that something you think Facebook should maybe try to do with politics in terms of this sort of like news feed algorithm, or do you think that would kind of freak people out, especially if I guess that's an open question for you. I mean, I would think that if they were to do that, if they were to put opposing viewpoints in your Facebook stream, as much as people might pretend that they don't want to live in a bubble, they would be more upset if they went to Facebook and saw opinions that they disagree with. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think that's probably true. It's, Facebook has kind of walked into social engineering in a way. And it just so happens that the form of engineering they're taking right now is amplifying whatever we do ourselves. And so you could argue that it would be a worthy goal for Facebook to try to instead work in the opposite direction and do something like that. But, I think we would feel more uncomfortable with that, even though we seem to be, fairly comfortable with what they're doing right now. But it's a very philosophical kind of divide.
I think that Facebook's results here are kind of disingenuous, and they indicate a huge problem we all have, which is that if we're going to be getting our news from the likes of Facebook, it seems to me that they would have some kind of responsibility beyond just, oh, we're just going to give you whatever you think you want. I mean, one of the ways that I've expressed what I want is who I followed. I followed, lots of people, and some of those people have political viewpoints that are very different from my own, but I chose to follow those people, and I can choose to unfollow those people. I can make a conscious decision, whereas the way I interact, and Facebook knows this, with my news feed is the worst version of myself. I'm bored, distracted, I'm kind of clicking, ooh, a puppy. I'm following these things, and it's really the non-rational part of my mind that's sort of determining these algorithms and the news feed and all that kind of stuff, and added to the fact that the news feed delivers only a tiny fraction of what the people I follow actually post, if you accept the default mode, which is to have heavy filtering. I mean, they're just abdicating responsibility. People are getting their news from Facebook, and they're saying, hey, it's not our problem. Just whatever you click on is going to determine what you get. Do you think that's reasonable, or do you think that they don't have a responsibility to be to offer a more balanced view in terms of politics or other things for that matter?
Well, again, I think you can argue it either way. It's, Facebook is giving you what you want. And so if you're looking for something to give you what you want, and that's normally what we're going to describe, right? And so if Facebook has to become a thing that gives you what you need, and then Facebook decides what you need, I think a lot of people will be uncomfortable with that. So it sort of cuts both ways, and I don't think there's an easy out for this.
I think there is. I think the out is that, read the newspaper. What are you going to do? Well, Scott K. Johnson, Christina, you have a comment on that?
Ideally, no. I think, though, that the funny thing you say, read a newspaper, but now Facebook wants newspapers to host their content on Facebook. So it kind of becomes a vicious kind of circular logic. But no, that's good, Mike.
Yeah, thanks. Scott K. Johnson is at arstechnica.com, and you can follow him at SJVATN on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us today, Scott.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Well, if you're searching for something to eat, Google will now let you order it directly from Google search results. Stephen Tweedie is a tech reporter for Business Insider and joins us to talk about this. Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good. So we're in the search results with this place an order option up here. Is it just like right there with the results on the sort of page one of the results?
Yeah, so it's really important to kind of point out that this is mobile only for right now. So, if you're Googling on your desktop or something, you won't see it quite yet. But yeah, on mobile, if you bring up Safari or something along those lines and just type in, Bravo's Pizza or something along those lines, where you normally see restaurant hours and kind of, the availability and location, you'll now see a little tiny truck icon that will say place an order. And so when that comes up, then you just, you tap that and it brings up any of the restaurants that are actually partnered, with that specific, or the delivery service, I should say, that are partnered with that specific restaurant. And then you can then jump right into a web page which has, the location already filled out, and you're just kind of taken into, the seamless kind of ordering experience to kind of complete your order.
So this is cool. This works on both mobile and desktop?
No, so mobile only right now. So I think
mobile
that's
only right now. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's, it would make sense for Google to also introduce it for desktop, because I think a lot of people, late at night are on their MacBook or something, and, between Netflix or something, they decide, hey, let's see what's open. But I do think it's smart to filter, to kind of siphon that through, Google search to begin with, because I think a lot of people don't always start within a seamless app, or, when they're deciding what to eat, they're kind of seeing late at night what's open. And so I think they go to Google for that. And so this is kind of streamlining that experience.
Now, of course.
Now, when you
go ahead, Christina.
Sorry, Mike, you go ahead. Okay, now I was just going to ask one kind of a question. Obviously, it'll fill in your information. Do you know if it will open up in the Seamless or the Delivery.com or the Grubhub app if you've got that installed on your phone, or does it just take you through the mobile experience? Because if you've already got the app installed on your phone, like I use Seamless like 6 times a week, obviously my credit card information is already there. It's a lot easier. Do you know if it does that, or if it's only linked as far as the mobile site?
So what happens is it does bring up an additional Safari window that is, seamless.com, but it also then, how the advertising works is it also then prompts you to either download the app if you haven't, or, at the top, you get a little kind of ribbon there, and then you can also hit open within the app if you want. So there are kind of two options.
Okay.
So so you can open it within the Seamless app itself.
This seems to be clearly a preparation for the coming age of, smartwatches and virtual assistants, where we really rely on these things. I could just imagine my, Android Wear watch saying, hey, you know, you've walked 100 steps today. You must be starving. How about a pizza? And you basically say, sure. And then 30 minutes or less, one shows up. I mean, I think that they're really getting to this point. But I think that and of course, this is going to be delivered by Seamless, Grubhub, Delivery.com, Eat24, Broad Menu, and MyPizza.com for now. They'll probably add additional delivery companies later. But I can see this becoming something where they expand it beyond food and they go into clothes, and essentially Google search becomes another Amazon.com to a certain extent, and one that's very amenable to the sort of Google Now sort of preemptive, how about this, how about that, click here to buy it kind of a situation. Do you think anybody, and by anybody I mean the European Union, will see this kind of thing as being anti-competitive?
That's hard to say. I mean, I'm not totally up to date, I guess would say, on like why the European Union would take a huge issue with it, because they are still working kind of with a lot of the delivery partners that, you know, already exist, like you mentioned, you know, Seamless, Grubhub, Delivery.com, you know, along those likes. And I think there are enough kind of the one button, which we were mentioning, where people are really lazy. They really want kind of an instant button. You know, there's Push for Pizza, which is literally an app that's just a button and you push it and pizza, you know, you set it up, one-time setup. And so I think there's enough kind of competitors where it's hard to say where with Google, they're already kind of siphoning people directly and streamlining them into kind of existing services. So I'm not sure. It's too soon to tell, I guess, is what I would say.
Well, this whole conversation is making me hungry. I hope they hurry up with all this stuff. Stephen Tweedie is at businessinsider.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Steve Tweedie. Thanks for joining us today, Stephen.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Well, the FAA is loosening its restrictions on drone use. I must have been really influential in my constant harping on them for their overly restrictive rules. Thomas Lee is a business columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle. He is also author of Rebuilding Empires, which is a book on the future of big box retail in the digital age. Well, welcome to you, Thomas.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Now, what is the FAA allowing now that it used to ban?
Well, it's allowing testing. I mean, I think it was holding up in terms of Amazon's application, along with Google's application of drones that could fly beyond the line of sight. And what we mean by that, essentially, can drones fly to areas where a pilot can't necessarily see what he can see beyond the line of sight? So I think right now that the FAA seems to be more amenable to Amazon, Google's applications. But there's a catch to this, is that these drones have to have the sensors that are necessary to detect like other aircraft in the sky. So they gotta be tricked out with things like radar, for instance. And quite frankly, I'm not a technical guy on drones, but I wonder how powerful their radar can be on these drones that could detect, say, a helicopter nearby or an airplane nearby, or to say, hey, you're going to crash into some electric wires or something like that. So it's still all very, very early right now.
So who are the early beneficiaries then of these new rules? I mean, obviously, you know, Amazon, as you said, you know, it was one of the reasons that they went to Canada was because they couldn't get testing. But who are some of the other companies that are going to benefit from some of these new rules?
Well, I think the question is more like who are benefiting from the rules right now. And that's pretty much, I mean, they have approved drone use for a number of companies. Now, not to bore you or anything, but the FAA's rule, it's called Section 333, and which requires that if you're going to fly aircraft in a nation's airspace, you're going to need a pilot, a human pilot. Obviously, that defeats the purpose of a drone. So they've been granting exemptions to this law since 2012, and companies that have been taking advantage of it are companies like energy companies that have been kind of, you know, exploring oil rig, or movie and production companies that obviously are shooting footage for film. So in terms of tech companies like Facebook and Google, who else would benefit from it, I think it's important to mention that it's still a long way off before they can even do the things that have captured our imagination, such as delivering packages in crowded urban areas. So if Google and Facebook do get the okay to start testing the service, it will be in kind of rural areas, you know, where they're sparsely populated, where it reduces the risk of them actually crashing into something.
Except for CNN, which got permission to test under certain circumstances in populated urban areas, did they not? Why did CNN get this special treatment?
I don't know. Maybe they have something in an FAA, but I think that the fact that they're a news organization might have something to do with it. Because let's face it, if CNN didn't get the permission, they'll probably be talking about it on CNN. So, I mean, I attended a drone conference in Santa Cruz last week, and the guy who's running all this, the head of the FAA, call it the drone office. That's not what it's officially called, but that's what I call it. It's a guy named Jim Williams. He's an interesting guy. He's kind of what you might think of as a classic government bureaucrat, and he showed up. He's the only guy wearing a suit, and frankly, he seemed somewhat confused at times with the barrage of questions people have been asking him, and that's understandably so. But he also seemed to think that it was really on the industry's prerogative to get the drones in the sky. So in other words, we got our stuff together, but it's the industry that is up to them to get their stuff together. And I don't really believe that, because we're still a very long way off in terms of crafting rules that would safely govern the use of drones in crowded urban areas. So as right now, FAA is pointing the industry is pointing the FAA, so around and around we go. So I'm not as optimistic as some people are in terms of Amazon and Google, getting to the skies anytime soon. I'm kind of with you, Mike, actually. I'm quite pessimistic about it, despite the recent coverage we've seen.
Well, the problem, of course, is that the FAA, as many agencies within the U.S. government are, they're populated by people from the aviation industry, and if you're a pilot, which I learned taking flying lessons a few years ago, man, they're awesome, very pilot friendly. The United States is actually a great place to be a pilot because of this long-standing, strong government presence within the FAA for people who are very, very pro-aviation. Now, drones, I think the aviation community see drones as just a potential problem. Pilots aren't out there flying little drones. They're flying airplanes, and they're in them. And that's what aviation is all about. And these drones are just like this annoying thing that could cause danger and deaths and so on. So I think they have no motivation to do this. I'd love to see a drone czar or something. I'd love to be the drone czar. If you're in government, give me a call.
I love to be the drone czar, but I don't want to actually do anything. I just want to be known as the drone czar.
That's what czars do. Nothing. Thomas, yeah, go ahead, Tom.
One more quick point. I think what you're talking about, I think you look at the FAA and aviation people as the established industry, right?
Yeah.
So the drones are the ones disrupting it. So this is not any different from Uber cabs, Uber cars, pissing off taxi cab drivers, right? So, and when's the last time the FAA had really had to deal with, disruption? It's planes. It's like you only think about the FAA when your flight is late. So suddenly they're dealing with things like disruption, innovation, Silicon Valley. These are the type of things that this kind of relatively mundane bureaucratic agency has never thought, have to think about. So we're looking at two clash of cultures right now.
And you're absolutely right about that. And it's even worse than you're saying, because in fact, people are using drones instead of planes and helicopters in many, many cases. If people are going to do aerial photography, they want to use a drone now instead of hiring a pilot, using all the services at an airport and all the rest. And so it's actually kind of a threat to the people who use planes and helicopters for their business, and that's got to be applying pressure as well. Obviously, the ultimate safety mechanism for drones is going to be programmatic. It's going to be the places where drones can go and not go are going to be programmed into the drones, right? They're already doing it for the White House and so on. And so that's something that the FAA really should get behind. So you have to have an air traffic control system that's software, basically. And
think about our air traffic control system right now. It's awful. I'm talking about regular planes.
Yeah.
They haven't updated that radar system since whatever. I mean, they're still debating about how to do that. You're right about what kind of software it might take to power a drone so it can see everything beyond the line of sight. And you're piloting a drone, and you're dealing with how many people live in cities, and so you can say that they're all a bunch of little airports, right, where they drop off the packages. And it's hard enough right now to operate an airport, for SFO. Imagine a city where everyone's house could potentially be a mini airport. So the amount of software power and all the amount of...
Okay, well, I think the FAA just cut off our Skype connection. Thomas Lee is at sfchronicle.com, and of course, that's the San Francisco Chronicle website. And I don't have his Twitter handle, but you can search for his name. And we thank him for coming on, and we apologize for Skype cutting off so abruptly.
No, I'm here, but thanks a lot.
Oh, you are? Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you're by Tom Lee. Is that your Skype handle?
That's right.
All right, by Tom Lee. That's BYTOMLEE. Thanks again for joining us, Thomas.
Hey, thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Take care. Well, nearly half of all video ads are never seen, according to Google. 3/4 of the unseen ads never appear on a device or even play in the background. The remaining quarter start playing, but the user scrolls past them in less than 2 seconds. The picture is better on Google's own YouTube, obviously. Something like 91% of the video ads running on YouTube sites and mobile apps are watched for at least 2 seconds. Christina Warren, there's a little fact that jumps out at me here. The metric for whether a video has been watched is 2 seconds. It's like they watch it for 2 seconds. They've seen our video.
Oh, they've seen it. No, and we wonder why so many people, do kind of what you guys do on TNT and on Twit and do mid-roll, advertisement, sponsor breaks, or why people are turning to product placement as kind of an increasing way to get people, in terms of powering advertisements. Yeah, I mean, what can we say? What I would be interested to know is how does this compare with television advertisements? How much time do people actually watch TV? And are they really seeing something? Or are they turning their head away? Or are they getting up and going into the other room? I would imagine TV is much better in terms of ROI than video ads on the internet. But I am curious how much better it actually is.
I think you're probably right. I mean, if you go online, there's always all this stuff right around. Imagine if while you're watching TV, all the other TV shows were being promoted on the periphery of your screen, you wouldn't stick around on that channel so much, especially for the commercials. And so, yeah, and I think, of course, TV, the viewership of commercials has probably gone way, way down because people are, they're TiVoing it or, they're DVRing it and just skipping through the commercials. There's a lot more channels. People are looking at their phones. It might be playing on the TV, but they don't even notice it. I mean, it's got to be rough out there for TV advertisers as well compared to the good old days when there were 3 channels and everybody had to sit there and watch it, watch all the ads.
Right. Because you had no phone to play Cookie Jam on while the commercials were airing. Like you had like no 500 channels to switch to another one, and there was no Netflix that had no commercials at all. You're right, the good old days.
It's a dystopian past, isn't it? It's like you always think about the dystopian
really
future, but the past is really depressing. Well, in vaguely related news, Snapchat unveiled a new 10-second ad format that costs advertisers only 2 cents per view. I think that's pretty cheap, isn't it, Christina? That sounds like a very, very inexpensive ad format.
Yeah, it seems inexpensive. I mean, I think, although obviously if they can get as many views for the demographics that they're wanting, I guess it could be good. But yeah, that seems low, especially, honestly, yeah, no, I'm going to go back and say, I'm not even going to hedge and say maybe it's okay. I'm going to say, no, that seems very low, particularly because the demographic that uses Snapchat is so in demand. That seems incredibly low.
Yeah, and also I bet the viewerships are much higher than what Google's reporting for the industry in general.
Oh, without a doubt, they are, without a doubt. And that demographic, as I said, people spend a lot of money on it. And if you look at what Instagram is able to get on for their ads, which, are photos, obviously, and it's tremendous. It's not 2 cents. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Well, Microsoft announced yesterday that Windows 10 is the last version of Windows. Now, before you Apple fanboys rejoice, what they mean is that future versions won't be released in big version releases, but instead trickled out constantly. In other words, they're transitioning the operating system from Windows as a product to Windows as a service. And Christina Warren, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this isn't going to happen for the next release. I'm going to say that they think this is going to happen, but they're going to change their tune, and I think they're going to come out with a Windows 11. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think this is one of those things where they're going to say, this is the last one, and then we're going to do Windows as a service. And then Windows 10 is going to be a big success because they're basically walking back all the stuff they screwed up with Windows 8, the same way Windows 7 was a big success because they walked back all the stuff they screwed up with Windows Vista. And, at that point, they'll be like, well, actually, it turns out people really like Windows. Whether, that remains to be seen and whether they can really maybe eventually, go to this service model, I don't know. But, I'm with you. I think that this is a little bit premature. It's odd to me that they would even say this.
Well, what's interesting about the new Microsoft is that I think they are a more open-minded company. I think they're less rigid about where they're going, and they're also allowing people to talk in public and say things that, you know, you don't know whether it's just speculative or whatever. You know, oh, Windows might be open sourced. You know, we could do this, we could do that.
We might open source the kernel. No, totally. No, it's way more open. But I guess my point is, I'm not sure why you would broadcast this if one of the big goals with Windows 10 is that you're trying to get enterprise adoption, right? You're trying to get everybody kind of on board. People who've been sitting out the last cycle, you're trying to get them to go from 7 to 10 and pay these fees and get on the train. If you're advertising this as the last version and that you're then going to be going to a service model, does that not in some way disincentivize people from going to Windows 10 and then say, well, hey, our stuff works fine on Windows 7? I mean, I kind of don't, I almost wonder if it has a weird Osborne effect sort of thing if you're, you know, I guess saying this so far in advance. I mean, on the one hand, you maybe want to prepare people for what you're hoping your reality would be, and I think that's fine. But on the other hand, I think being so definitive, you know, before the product is even out, saying it's the last one that's going to be like this seems premature.
Yeah, it does seem premature to me. And by the way, it has to be said that I have a new metric for when the show is going long. My Apple Watch is telling me that I need to stand up. So that's how I know we need to move it along with. So we're running a little later than usual. Spotify is planning to move into the web video business to compete directly against YouTube, according to the Wall Street Journal. The Swedish company has reportedly approached several digital media firms about potential partnerships. Spotify could announce its video plans at a media event on May 20th in New York City. Christina, are you going to this event?
I am. I will be going to the event. I will be covering it, and I probably will be periscoping from at least part of it. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they'll be streaming the event, so I won't be live streaming the event itself, but I'll be periscoping and covering it. No, I mean, you know, this is really interesting, and this is something that, you know, Spotify has really done well in music. If they are able to get the right sort of partnerships, they could do well in the broader digital media stuff. What's also interesting, as people have pointed out, is that this announcement is coming 2 weeks before WWDC, where Apple is widely expected to be kind of, you know, reintroducing Beats, or maybe it'll be called iTunes Music, who knows, to the world. So it's fun times in the music business between this and Tidal and all the Apple stuff, and not to mention YouTube, you know, the big elephant in the room. What seemed like kind of stayed and you know, industry where it seemed like Spotify had kind of been the undisputed winner is now getting complicated and competitive.
Yeah, it is. And I think that, you know, my big question is what took them so long? I mean, you know, there's demand on the internet for music videos, and these Spotifys of the world have to be wondering, why are we letting Google and YouTube run away with this whole thing? I mean, that's where you go for music videos, for all kinds of stuff, and YouTube just kind of owns it, whereas, you know, the Spotifys of the world, you know, they live for music. And so you'd think at least the music video part of it, they would really try to aggressively get into that racket. So, all right, well, a little bit more news in just a sec, but first let's talk about healthy snacking. Let's talk about Naturebox, one of our sponsors today. Naturebox is a great service, and right now, if you'd like to try it, you can try it for free. You just have to pay the $2 for shipping, and they'll send you a trial of their favorite snacks right to your door, again, for no cost other than the cost of shipping, and it's low cost, $2. You know you're going to snack, and you don't want to have junk food lying around, because the problem is with junk food is you're going to eat it, and that's not good. You should eat real food, healthy food, like what you get from Naturebox. These have 0 artificial colors, 0 artificial flavors, 0 artificial sweeteners, 0 grams of trans fat, and no high fructose corn syrup. Leo says fructose. I say fructose. Whatever it is, you shouldn't consume it because it's really not good for you. The best part about Naturebox, though, is that it tastes fantastic. They have more than 100 healthy and crave-worthy options. You gotta try it out, and you can do so for free. Right now, if you go to naturebox.com/twit, you can get a trial of their favorite snacks delivered right to your door. Go to naturebox.com/twit and start your trial today. And don't forget to send Naturebox as a gift. If you've got a kid in college or you have somebody who's not eating well and you want to take better care of them, just get them a subscription, and they'll have healthy snacks all the time. We thank Naturebox for their support of Tech News Today. Big numbers for you today, $14.3 billion. That's how many dollars Samsung is spending to build a Samsung Semiconductor Valley, they're calling it, a new manufacturing complex to supply the essential components to the electronics industry. Now get this, the complex sits on a site that's the size of 400 soccer fields. That's like a country. That's like soccer fields are enormous, and 400 of them. This is a huge facility. It's almost twice as big as the second biggest comparable facility. Christina Warren, Samsung is, I think, wise to do this. They're going to make money in the components business, not in smartphones forever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, is that they make so much money from components. I mean, they kind of started out that way, right? They were making the components, and then they were like, well, look, we can just sell these things under our own name and be a winner there in our own right. But I mean, half the stuff in an iPhone includes components made by Samsung, the chips, the memory, a lot of that stuff. Sometimes even the screens. So yeah, I think this is a really smart move. I'm awed by the size. I can't even fathom something as large as what you're saying, but it's mammoth, and that's really fantastic.
Yeah, and they're going to have a commuter system internally just to get from one side of the facility to the other. Hopefully, there'll be underground tubes. They should talk to Elon Musk about that. Well,
yeah, they really should. Amazing.
Another big number for you, and this is a depressingly big number, 2.1 million. That's how many human beings still pay for AOL's 56 kilobit per second modem dial-up service to connect to the internet, according to the company's earnings call. Now, just to give you a sense of how slow that is, it's approximately, smartphones, your average smartphone data connection is about 100 times faster than that. And, Christina Warren, let's be honest, these are older people who got onto the internet back when dialing up through the phone was a reasonable idea, right. And they just always figured that that's what it takes to do it.
Well, actually, I mean, I would go even further and say that most of the people who still pay for the dial-up don't even realize they're still paying for it, because they're almost certainly not actually dialing up. So they're paying for it as an add-on to their additional, internet service they're paying through their cable company or their DSL company. 4 years ago, because the story comes up every quarter, every year. 4 years ago, I tried to actually track down someone who was still an AOL dial-up subscriber and willingly subscribed through dial-up. True story. Tried to find this for a story for Mashable. By the way, if anybody out there knows someone who still subscribes willingly to AOL dial-up, call me. But the funny thing was, I finally tracked down a couple, grandparents of a friend of mine, and they were Russian immigrants who came over during World War II. After World War II, they had dial-up internet and probably still an old Windows 95 computer, Windows 98, something like that. And they were fine with the dial-up speeds. The week that I went to talk to them about the story, they ended up moving over and getting Comcast and getting cable internet. Why? Because they found out about YouTube and found out that YouTube would let them watch old radio shows, listen to old radio shows from their youths in Russia. And that was enough of a catalyst to say, even us 90-year-old couple, we need more.
Yeah. And
so that was 4 years ago. So, and what's actually really interesting, if you look at the decline, they've managed to keep these 2 million people. Like the decline has been precipitous, but it just hasn't been huge in terms of how the drop off has happened. So I've got to be thinking that this is just, they've somehow convinced a lot of people, or a lot of people just haven't noticed they're still getting billed, $21.99 a month or whatever it costs each month on their credit card. But the decline of those number of subs, it declines every quarter, but it doesn't go down by this mammoth amount. It's trickling on, and it's basically pure profit for AOL, because I mean, how many phone lines do they even have to maintain? How many people how many of these 2.1 million people even log in once a month? That would be an interesting thing to find out. I'm sure AOL will never release that information, but it's stunning to me that in the year 2015, 2.1 million people are still paying for AOL dial-up.
It is wow. Stunning. It's absolutely stunning. Although I do admit that I kind of miss that old modem sound.
Yes. Yeah.
There it comes. This one's having trouble connecting. I guess AOL servers are not as responsive.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is a wonderful. Yeah, it used to be. That was the sound of connecting to the internet. Once upon a time.
There's something Pavlovian about that for me. I hear that. I go back to my youth. I go back to like when I was first experiencing the internet. It's an exciting sound, and it's sort of funny that there are people out there, coworkers of mine, who have probably never really cognitively experienced that sound. It goes away just in a generation. It's really, really fascinating.
It is, but I love the sound of it. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Judy Vondruska, who posted this picture on Twitter. She's watching Tech News Today on a laptop while having lunch at a local diner. Here is that picture. And very cool. That looks like one of the apps that you can download, which gives you the chat room and the schedule and everything. Very cool. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. Christina Warren, what the heck are you working on besides your Apple Watch?
Besides my Apple Watch, well, I've been covering a lot of things with Periscope and kind of Meerkat and kind of the role they played with the fight last week. And I had a piece that went up today basically arguing, since Periscope is under all this media scrutiny, both for good and bad reasons, what does that mean for Meerkat? And how does it kind of stack up in the industry? And I think that was a pretty good analysis. That went up earlier today. And focusing on more things kind of along those lines, and obviously playing with my Apple Watch. I'll be periscoping from an ASUS event on Monday. They're going to be showing off some new laptops and stuff, and that's basically me right now.
Very cool. Now, Christina, as a columnist, do you take requests?
I do sometimes. Yes. Do you have a request?
I have a request. I think somebody needs to bring to the world of people over the age of 20 the world of YouNow. We're all talking about Periscope and Meerkat. Yep. YouNow's been around for a long, long time, and it's a big deal.
True.
It
is a big
teenagers.
deal. You're absolutely right.
And so,
actually, you know what? That's a great point.
Yeah. And so, I went and checked it out, and clearly, like, I'm 2 or 3 times older than the average person, but it's a thriving. It's one of those things like when you first heard that YouTube stars were more popular by among people under the age of 20 than TV stars and music, right. And you're like, what? There's a whole world that people over the age of 20 are completely unaware of, and it's really a thriving thing on YouNow, and it's not even new. It's been around for quite a while.
No, it's been around for a while. You're dead on. That's actually a really important point. I think that is something I'm going to have to look into. Thank you for the suggestion. I will give you a hat tip in the article if I'm able to write something, because you're dead on. I mean, there's a whole generation of users that I usually I'm up to about 21. I mean, 21 and over, I'm usually pretty much like, I know what you're talking about. But once we go to the high school age and younger, I have to admit, this is where I start to feel very old, which is very awkward for me because I'm not used to feeling old. But I start to feel old when I look at what the middle schoolers and high schoolers are doing, and I go, oh, okay, they have an entire social currency that is actually different. And that's the first time in my life that I've ever felt like I don't get some certain parts of tech, and it's an awkward feeling. But you're right, YouNow is one of those things where there's certainly a thriving community, and it reminds me a lot about like kind of the Formspring and the Ask FMs of a few years ago. It's those similar types of communities where kids just really feel free to kind of be themselves, and it's very interesting.
It certainly is very interesting, and you can catch up with Christina Warren at film_girl on Twitter. Thank you, Christina. We'll see you next time.
See you next time, Mike.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. You can subscribe to Tech News Today wherever fine podcasts are aggregated, and you can also watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1800 UTC at live.twit.tv. If you're ever near Petaluma, California, the technology broadcasting capital of the world, come on in and watch us as part of our studio audience. Just send email to tickets@twit.tv at least 24 hours in advance of your appearance at our front door. If you'd like to help us grow our audience, here's how you can do it. Just post a link to twit.tv/TNT on the social media site of your choice. Tag 3 friends along with your recommendation to subscribe. Share the joy. You can also follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV, and you can follow me on Vine, vine.co/mike.elgan. Also, don't miss Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific every single weeknight, and that is the Tech News Today. The show was produced by Jason Cleanthes and edited by Brian Burnett. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Monday.